Hey guys, we got a video here from the Laird's Lair today, and his community has picked the 20 greatest arcade games of all time. So let's discuss.
I think you're going to be very surprised by some of the titles that made the final cut too.
I'm sure we will.
Especially when it comes to the top of the chart.
Oh, you can see the ones that just missed out up there in the top corner too. Special mentions list, so to speak.
Just making the list at number 20 is
Aha!
the game that launched Konami into the big time.
Frogger.
The timeless classic Frogger.
Well, thing with Frogger is it was a pop culture phenomenon. It had a Seinfeld episode about it. George Costanza trying to keep his high score, bring the unit to his apartment. Classic episode. This game came out during a lot of competition for single-screen arcade games. You know, between 1980 and 82, you had Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, things like that. So it's with some heavy competition. I probably would have put this on myself on maybe the special mentions list, but I'm not going to complain too much. This game is an all-time classic.
Timothy Patrick for the
Get that little frog across the road.
Frogger leads my top three.
I loved crossing the road with Frogger. I hated trying to jump on the logs and the lily pads, trying to get him in the little slot. That little bit infuriated me.
It's simple fun. If I see this sitting in an arcade, no matter the condition of the cabinet, if it's on and working...
I think my second cousins owned a cabinet of this in their garage collecting dust as well. And there's been a multitude of sequels for this as well. A few spin-offs. Yeah. Alright, what do we got next? House of the Dead.
Was the first arcade game to get an 18 certificate. And was, rather surprisingly, the only gun game to make this list.
Yeah, I mean, you guys probably remember when House of the Dead first came out. It's sort of when the ESRB or the rating system first became a thing for video games, and they would actually have the sheet covering the arcade machine so the underage kids couldn't see the gameplay because you had to protect young eyes and things like that. Used to play House of the Dead 2, 3 in the later entries a lot. Never played the first one. I had the gun for Dreamcast and would do number 2 with the bad voice acting and everything. But this one's a little bit less familiar to me.
The retro gaming nostalgia
iconic nevertheless.
His love for the whole franchise. The House of the Dead games.
I don't know if I would have put this in the top 20.
That's what I spent the most time on and have the fondest memories of.
Certainly a trailblazing gun game for sure. You know, when, you know, this, Virtua Cop, Time Crisis, Point Blank, all same era. Alright, what we got next?
Another game from Sega takes the 18th position on this list.
Ooh.
The opening game in the famous Ninja series, Shinobi would no doubt be a surprising entrant for many.
It is for me, because I could be wrong, but I think Shinobi came out in 1987. I think. And you had some banging games in 1987. You had Raston, you had Double Dragon, you had Operation Wolf. That's just off the top of my head. Wonder Boy in Monsterland. A lot of banging games in... I would have probably not even put this in number 1 in 1987 or even the top 5 in 1987. So, Shinobi is a great game, but it's in a year with heavy competition. Yeah, guys, don't agree with this one.
Many people
great ninja game, though. But as you said, it's a 20 best games. This ain't it.
Reasoning. Shinobi is the only way to live all those ninja movies in an arcade cabinet. Shurikens, special magic, and a ton of enemies, with great graphics too.
I mean, that's all true. I just don't think it's the greatest game.
Given that it's one of the most beloved multiplayer platformers of all time,
Bubble Bobble.
I think a lot of you will be shocked to learn that Bubble Bobble only managed 17th place on this list.
I mean, we're talking about the top 20 arcade games of all time, right? Think about the thousands of arcade games there were. I think no matter where it is in the top 20 list, it's still the elite of the elite. And, hey, as long as Bubble Bobble's in there, it was certainly the greatest game of 1986. And, I mean, yeah, one of the best single-screen arcade puzzle action games ever made. Still fun to play today. I still enjoy this game nearly 40 years later. It's just tremendous fun. And there's been so many spin-offs and reboots over the years. It's for a reason.
However, there was still plenty of passion for the game, as Bernard Larson of Retro Gaming Hysteria
I used to have this at the burger shop in a cabinet on the Gold Coast when I visit my grandmother.
So much since they came out, and
I have to admit, when it comes to these single-screen arcade games, I kind of snobbed them a little bit when I was young because I was spoilt with Super Mario Brothers, which was like the side-scrolling action platformer, you know. So I would see these single screen arcade games when I was young, and I have to admit, I would snub my nose. I'd turn my nose up at them. I didn't really have an appreciation for them until later in my life. So my apologies for that.
Still love them.
Yeah, wonderful game. Good choice, guys. I agree with that
The original
one.
Mortal Kombat might have just missed out on a place in the prestigious top 20, but the sequel certainly didn't, with Midway's game getting more second choice votes than any other.
Yeah, I think objectively Mortal Kombat 2 is better.
Wax lyrical about this classic. I loved Street Fighter 2, even though I didn't get to play enough of it in the arcades. But when I first heard an MK1 cabinet blasting from the other side of a convenience store, I was already hooked.
Yeah, look, I think Street Fighter 2 is probably a better game, but, you know, Mortal Kombat 2 is an all-round great package, you know, between the gore and the lore and the backstories of every character. It's certainly a very engaging game. I wouldn't recommend Mortal Kombat 2 to any beginners. I mean, if you're playing it on a low difficulty, you're still going to get smoked.
Loved how it looked.
Only the best fighters in the Earth realm are going to do good on this one.
Loved the game's atmosphere, and I really enjoyed playing it with friends.
Yeah, it's kind of the total package.
I was keen on the gameplay of MK1 as I was at the time.
Yeah, it was definitely a big step up from the first one.
Genesis for Mortal Monday when it came out.
Crazy, it only came out a year later.
It's MK1, but bigger and better. Like other T-Unit
games, lots of characters.
MK1, you were pulled in by that loud,
bit darker as well.
Sound. This is my favourite game of all time. Not.
Well, nice pick, Mr. Laird.
There are very few games in the early 80s.
Oh, Robotron 2020?
2084. And its influence can still be seen in the games of this day. And that's why it made the top 15. Paul Pollington of Retro Gaming Hysteria put it pretty simply.
Well, you know, I think the Robotron still holds up, because you look at all the bullet hell games of today, like just Vampire Survivors, Brotato, all that kind of stuff that's had a big resurgence. Kind of started here from Robotron, if you think about it. It's not really that much different. Survive as many rooms as you can, onslaught of enemies. Only difference in this one is you're obviously not really upgrading your weaponry, but yeah, I mean, this kind of gameplay is still relevant. I don't know if I'd put it in the top 20, but I'm not even mad.
The hectic game
Never thought about it this way before. And you just can't beat those sound effects. They just pump, they just slap through the speakers, eh?
Although Konami were already
X-Men the arcade game
came along, it was this series of licensed scrolling beat-em-ups that shot them into the stratosphere, and X-Men is often considered to be the ultimate example of these.
Unpopular opinion, I don't think the X-Men is anywhere near the most, well, I don't think it's anywhere near the best beat-em-up of all time, let alone the top 20 arcade games. I get it, it's X-Men, everyone loves X-Men, comic books, things like that, but most of their characters play very clunky. I feel like the gameplay is exceptionally cheap in this game. But there are other lesser-known beat-em-ups by Konami alone, not including all the other companies, like Metamorphic Force, Violent Storm, that have much more fluid and fun gameplay. They just didn't package it with a popular licensed entity such as X-Men. So, I disagree with this pick.
Incredible
I understand why it's popular.
Although nobody shared
any
specific opinions of the game, both Troy Infinity and David Allen Kivy Jr. of Retro Gaming
We'll say Nightcrawler's pretty fun to use.
In their top spot.
Yeah. It only got popular because of its license.
Proved to be popular when the votes started rolling in. And Sega's most famous arcade brawler, Golden Axe, was perhaps unlucky to only make 13th place.
No, I think, again, being in the top 20 at all with all the thousands of games that have come out, this is a perfect spot. I'm glad Golden Axe is in there. Some of my best arcade and console memories are from playing this game. I first played this at the laser tag, and I was so fascinated with the sound effects and music. You know, the eerie scream. And, you know, what I loved as well is when you kill an enemy, they grey out, so the bodies are left behind, and you can see the damage that you've caused, and man, the mounts, the dragons, everything. I mean, I put a lot of money into this machine. So happy when I finally got to rent it and then get a copy of my own at home. Master System, Mega Drive, didn't matter. I loved all versions of this game, except maybe the Amiga version, but going off on a tangent now. Yeah, Golden Axe is fantastic. Definitely deserves to be in the top 20. Maybe graphically it doesn't hold up as well now. Atmosphere-wise, 10 out of 10, amazing. Feel like you're in your own barbarian movie.
Third place, Golden Axe. Second place goes to Double Dragon. And first place has to be Outrun. All three have great music and developed each of the genres that they represent.
Sega was definitely the king of the arcades in the 80s, man. Every genre, Sega was just smashing it.
Arcade game to make this list. There's no doubt in the influence of Donkey Kong when it comes to the world of platform games.
I don't think we need to really explain too much the impact of Donkey Kong. I still find it fun to play, even though it's just 3 levels that loop over and over and over. They're fun. It's early platforming goodness. Two great mascots in this game that still live on even today. All I really need to say.
With its central character, Mario, becoming a household name.
Yep.
More people actually shared comments for this game than any other. But my favourite one came courtesy of YouTube subscriber CLC.
Hello, CLC.
Donkey Kong. It was the first game that truly mesmerised me. I was also a teenager, was stoned from weed for the first time ever, and when I walked into the new arcade and the first machine I looked at asked me, how high can you get? It pretty much broke my brain.
I never really had an arcade experience, unfortunately, with this one. Being that it came out in 1981, I was very, very small, but thankfully, thanks to modern technology, you can now play the arcade version at home. And you'll have to let me know, guys, if your parents played this one, what memories they have.
Beat 'em up in this countdown. The Simpsons are widely praised for capturing all the humour and character of the cartoon.
Yeah, so I think the Simpsons arcade game came out after the first season of the Simpsons, wasn't it? You'll notice that some of the sprites have that old art style. I'm not going to lie, I didn't really like Simpsons until season 2, you know, with episodes like Dancing Homer and stuff. But the world was still mesmerised after the first season. Yeah, it is a fun game. Wonderful beat 'em up. It's smooth. They had this everywhere. Outside the supermarket. I would play this at the airport, even though I would never fly anywhere. I think I'd go pick up family and the machine would be there, so I'd just have a game while I'd wait. Yeah, man. I mean, what can I say? The gameplay is great. Konami being Konami, it can be a little bit cheap at times, but I mean, these games are designed to take your money. Nothing but good memories playing this. I hope they reboot it on modern consoles one day.
YouTube member Tempest Fennick is back once again with this tasty tidbit. The Simpsons, because it's the one I enjoy playing the most, and we never
I've seen more ways to do the best with Homer and Bart too. I don't know if there's that much of a difference between all the characters, but I feel like Homer and Bart always seem to die the least.
Started the arcade revolution.
Was this Tempest?
Conspicuous by its absence so far, but as we
I never really understood the fuss on Tempest. There was a similar game to this as well called Gyrus. You could argue that Tempest came along first, so it deserves the flowers more, so to speak. I do appreciate the vector graphics. Vector graphics were a primitive graphics style that were just like basically using algebra or whatever to give the illusion of like 3D pictures and things like that, even though in the reality it was just lines on the screen. But I don't know, I have a soft spot for vector graphics. They always made a game look more cutting edge than what they actually were. But I don't know, Tempest never did it for me, huh?
Atari storms in with a game that was recently revived for modern audiences in the form of Tempest. Rather predictably, it was a member of the Atari history group, Paul Townley, that jumped in with his piece.
I think there's a reboot of Tempest on Steam as well, if you do want to play a modern imagining of this. Tempest 2000 or whatever.
And it never got old or boring.
I can understand that it's fun. The game itself just did nothing for me. I didn't realize it came out all the way back in 1980, so that's actually pretty impressive.
Another company that you might be surprised not to see.
Gallagher. You guys are probably going to call the game Galaga a few times, and it's going to drive you nuts because that's what a lot of us Aussies used to call it. But yeah, I think this deserves to be on the list. I mean, it's a sequel to Galaxian. Just a wonderful, simple shooter. Less is more. Always addicting to chase high scores and get those additional levels in. I don't know how many levels are on this game. I think I only ever got up to level 30 plus before I gave up. You'll have to let me know if there's an ending or if it goes on forever, guys. I don't know. How far have you gotten?
10, as iconic scrolling shoot 'em up Gallagher.
I like that you can get captured and then rescue your ship and then have the twin ships.
Nostalgia shared this heartwarming memory.
I wonder if he's going to do it in this video.
My daycare had a cabinet and I played it constantly. It's what got me into gaming.
Yeah, I used to have this on the NES. I honestly think the NES version's more fun. Again, probably got to do with the difficulty, but playing either is just as good depending on your skill
I
level.
was genuinely surprised to see so many people vote for Bally Midway's Tron.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to talk about the positive things about Tron. First of all, one of the most stunning arcade cabinets you'll ever see in your whole life. It looks like something that came out of the future. It's a beautiful cabinet, glowing blue cabinet. And look, there's a hybrid of mini games in Tron. There's, you know, the bikes. There's this shooter, this cone shooting level. I think there's a level where you have to shoot spiders or something. And look, there's a hybrid of gameplay elements, which I can admire about this. I think it was also a twin stick shooter, if I'm not mistaken. One of the first I remember. But I just felt like all the levels, I guess you could say, in Tron are fine, but they're middling. There's nothing in this that is exceptional, albeit nostalgia for the movie. So yeah, I'm very surprised Tron's in here too. I probably wouldn't have put Tron in here. A great memory, but top 20 arcade games, come on.
Vote. Michael Winchester,
maybe in the top 3 for 1982 or 83.
Who delivered this shock and was happy to tell me why.
It's like the Snake game on mobile.
I love the different areas.
Oh yeah, that's right. You had the tanks too.
It really was the closest thing to playing the movie.
At least it did somewhat feel like the movie, especially with the bikes. Alright, what do we got now? Miss Pac-Man.
More of the same in many ways, but Bally Midway's Miss Pac-Man not only improved on the original game in every area, but also helped open up arcade games to a female audience.
See, I grew up playing Pac-Man on NES. I never got into the Miss Pac-Man craze. I'll admit, because when I was a kid, I didn't realise it was better. Because this game originally came out in the arcades a little bit before my time. This is what the parents were playing, or even the grandparents now. Yeah, I mean, pop culture phenomenon. I think this game filled up their arcade machines so quickly with coins, they couldn't keep up with emptying the slots. And there'd always be a jam to the point where people couldn't keep putting in coins anymore. It was nuts. This just absolutely took over the world.
YouTube viewer Dregs and Vestiges was certainly impressed by what this sequel offered.
Now watching this, it certainly does look better than the original Pac-Man.
And improving on the original.
Yeah, what a classic. They don't really do anything with Miss Pac-Man anymore, ironically. It's just always Pac-Man re-releases or reboots.
I think you all
Street Fighter 2.
Coming. You'll never hear people talk about the greatest arcade games of all time without Capcom's unbelievably influential one-on-one fighter being mentioned at least once. Retro gaming hysteria contributor Glenn Buchanan was one of many with a story to share about this classic cab.
You know, I think if this game didn't make the list, I think pretty much the whole internet would have rioted. So it's a big relief to see Street Fighter 2 go on this list. I mean, you could argue that this would be in the top 5 for sure. It's a little bit lower, but again, they're picking the 20 elite games, and so I'm just glad that it's on the list at all. I think people were playing this at the arcades, at the takeaway store, at the supermarket, at the video rental place, wherever. I mean, this was everywhere. It'd also be on display on all the consoles in the shops and everything too. It was just so unfortunate. I never enjoyed it as much as I should have at first, because there would always be a bigger kid on the machine, and I would put in my money, and I would never know how to use any of the special moves, and I would just get smoked within 2 seconds. Money gone. The big kid stays on the machine. I used to always use Blanker at first, because I used to cheese his big leg kick to try and get some range damage. I didn't know how to do any special moves. First special move I ever learned how to do was like Chun-Li's turbo kick. And it wasn't until I finally rented this on console that I learned how to use proper moves with Ryu, Ken, things like that. But yeah, I was at a big disadvantage at first.
Street Fighter 2. The arcade culture was at its height, and the
I was a very basic bish at this game. Still am, to be honest.
That they abandoned the match halfway through.
Wonderful pick, though.
Crowd roared and cheered, and you got a massive ego boost.
I do prefer the Champion Edition, though, because you can use the villains as well.
The first of these
Outrun, yeah, this deserves to be in there.
Favorites.
Good pick.
Amazing Outrun.
Yeah, told you, in the 80s, Sega was the king of the arcades, man. Outrun. Look how nice this game is. It came out in 1986. 3D racing. Games did not look like this in 1986. In the year beforehand, Sega also brought out Space Harrier, which was also freaking nuts.
which you all agree
they've always been ahead of the curve, at least till the mid-90s anyway.
Retro gaming nostalgia member James Cale hit the nail on the head here.
I used to love the hydraulic cabinet for this too.
It also has some masterpiece console incarnations too.
I hope they re-release Outrun 2 as well, by the way. I still play that in the arcade to this day. My arcade still has a cabinet. They need to report that on console. We haven't had it since PS2. And I love Beat the Clock racing games. They're the best.
From one arcade icon,
I would put this in here too.
Arcade game ever, and the best to be based on a classic movie too.
This is one of the first arcade games that I ever played, the Star Wars arcade game. I remember we'd go to the playtime in the city after a movie or whatever. My dad would sit me in his lap in the big Star Wars cabinet, and we would play this game together. It's one of my earliest arcade memories I've ever had from 1983 or 1984. Again, a vector graphics game, which gives it the illusion of being, I guess, more cutting edge of what it is with all the 3D designs and everything. It basically emulates a trench run. You have to shoot the TIE fighters, then go in the trench. You're all clear, kid. Throw the torpedo, blow up the Death Star, and basically it keeps looping, getting harder and harder and harder each time, with even additional sections in the Death Star, so to speak.
Atari,
phenomenal game.
Coin Muncher, Star Wars warps into 4th place.
Yeah, wonderful. I know it doesn't look like much now, but this was incredible.
Summed up my own
absolutely
thoughts
incredible
perfectly with this comment.
I'm surprised my...
Star Wars, and especially the sit-down version with the vector graphics and Obi-Wan Kenobi's voice, it made me feel like I was in the movie.
Me too, exactly. But yeah, you got the voice acting in this as well, which is incredible for a game of its age. I'm surprised my community doesn't enjoy watching me play this one.
We already had X-Men and The Simpsons, and I'm sure that you knew that the only Konami brawler that could beat it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
You know, I think Ninja Turtles definitely deserves to be on this list. I might sound like a bit of a hypocrite, just in the sense that the gameplay in this is just as clunky, if not even worse, than the X-Men arcade game. So I'm almost contradicting myself here, because the gameplay in Turtles is not that good. But I mean, my memory of in 1990 spending my holiday money with my friend at the arcade and basically blowing it all to beat this game together. It's one of my greatest gaming memories ever made, so I'm probably going to have a personal bias. But there was nothing... Oh, look, I will say this. If you did play with 4 people, the game was substantially easier. These games are definitely designed for more players. And obviously, hindsight's 2020. The X-Men cabinet also had 6 players. So, yeah, obviously the experience, I think, is going to be more memorable if you have more people. So maybe I was a bit harsh on X-Men. But I might be contradicting myself, but I definitely think Turtles deserves to be up here. There wasn't quite an experience like it.
Perfectly
looked way ahead of its time. These graphics are from 1989.
Supporters on both YouTube and Facebook.
It just made you feel like you're in the cartoon, man.
Put it pretty succinctly. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. As a kid, I was a huge fan of TMNT.
I love playing this on God mode on the Cowabunga collection as well. One hit kills on everything. It's so much fun. Alright, what do we got next?
And in second place, it's a game that's been reinvented over the years more than any other.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest pop culture phenomenon of all time outside of probably Super Mario. Pac-Man. I'm still buying Pac-Man games now. Some are good, some are not so good. I would recommend you get Pac-Man Championship Edition or Pac-Man 256 or whatever it's called, you know, with the memory glitch or whatever. Yeah, Pac-Man's a great game. I'm just surprised that they put Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man on the list. I mean, I guess it makes sense. I would have picked one or another, just because it might have been nice to use that slot to put another game in to talk about, you know. But I'm not going to be too mad.
It still has such a
they were both incredible games that took a lot of money.
Mine included. Namco's classic Pill Popper had no shortage of great comments left for it. But I picked this one out from Mike Tresniak in the Atari History Group. Pac-Man. I was only a kid during the height of the craze, but I really felt like I was part of an iconic thing. I played it a lot and also got pretty decent at it too.
I'm glad that his community, after picking these games, are leaving their own feedback and memories as well. It's a nice touch.
It's the game that very much kicked off the whole scrolling beat-em-up craze of the late 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to #1 games of 1987, I think it's either going to be well, it is Double Dragon. I mean, I'd probably put Operation Wolf in second, Double Dragon first. That's why I was surprised to see Shinobi on the list. I first played this on console, so I kind of missed out the arcade craze, so to speak, on Double Dragon. But I remember there used to be lines out the door for people to grab a turn and to play this game for the first time. I do remember seeing the pictures and art and everything on the internet about the experience. So yeah, you'll have to let me know your Double Dragon memories.
Double Dragon. I bet you didn't see that
but,
one.
1987 beat 'em up.
By just a single point.
Incredibly ahead of its time. So much fun to play even now.
And YouTube subscriber Tempest Fennec scores a hat trick by delivering this comment.
And by the way, don't forget, if you want to be good at Double Dragon, the arcade game, you got to spam the elbow.
Which I felt was just too poignant to leave out. Double Dragon. My youngest uncle, just 3 years older than myself,
that was lucky.
Discovered this in the entrance area to a discounted
Yeah, I mainly played video games with my aunt when I was a young boy. She was only about 10 years older than me, but when I'm 8, that would make her 18. So, close enough. We played a lot of games together. It's good to have a relative close to your age.
Walk from my grandparents' house. As I would learn later on, there was a semi-regional arcade distributor there in the town, and they would lend out machines on a 50-50 coin split, but with no upfront cost. The distributor would swap out machines in places like this store as income on old machines went down.
I was always wondering how the business would work out for that.
Soon after it came out, as well as Road Blasters around that time too. But Uncle and I got hooked on Double Dragon. We'd never seen anything like it before. This is absolutely my favourite video game soundtrack, and was the first arcade game that I ever saw the ending to.
I'm guessing that some people leased out arcade machines and then some people bought them outright, and then how much they would earn would depend on what deal they did in order to acquire the machine, I suppose. I've always wondered about the business models in the 80s. I've actually never asked anyone about it, so I'm learning a little something today.
Game Boy so that he could have someone to play it with via link cable. Although it was just 1 versus 1 like the Nintendo NES version too.
Yeah, NES version was a missed opportunity, no multiplayer.
Most fun, yet bittersweet memories I had of said uncle, who sadly passed away 4 years ago this month.
It's a shame.
And that rounds up my look at the greatest arcade games of all time.
Okay.
As voted for by you. Are there any games that you were surprised not to see on the list?
Well, I mean, a list like this is always going to be very polarizing, isn't it? I think overall the list was pretty good. Off the top of my head, I mean, right this second, I can't think of any that have been left out. I mean, obviously there is. There's certainly a couple games I don't think deserve to be in there. I mean, you could have probably taken out Tron and maybe put in, like, Gauntlet or Paperboy, so to speak. But I'm not going to be too finicky. I feel like a lot of thought went behind this list. So I want to thank the Laird's Lair and his community for a wonderful video. We hope we did it justice by reacting to it. And thank you for watching, guys. Be good. We'll see you on the next one.